I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight. As that alarm clock beeps and wakes you from your sleep, pull back the sheets, it's time to hit the streets. Dudes, fresh shave your face, girls put up your hair. Back breaking and aching from the equipment that you wear. Face to face with your locker, strapping on your vest. Pray to God it'll block a hollow point from your chest. Join up with the squad, that's the crew of the night. Here again, our evil man took another life. Got a price on your head, brother, better beware. Load up that Glock and prepare yourself for warfare. Spread grips to the concrete in this dead heat. Load up that Crown Vic and get back up on the beat. Ridicules what you get, not even a damn handshake. As the sun sets on that city landscape, nothing can stop you, snow, rain, or thunder. Gotta hold that blue line tight, you're the wolf hunter. I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight. I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight. No words can express the lack of respect. No arrest of a suspect's unchecked. They say you ain't shit and you always tell lies. Yet so quick to pick up and call when victimized. Riots and protests, it's always us they blame. It's expected, not regretted when a hero cop is slain. Never freeze up in fear when everyone's stomachs and knots. Who else you know running towards the gunshots? You know you're not alone. Take a look around. Look past the hate that you feel surrounds your town. The civil unrest, it needs to be addressed. So obsessed with judgment in the form of protest. So quick to judge and point fingers and blame. On the rifles and knives, and yet we can't take aim. In the streets and the chairs, they can't be muted. We're on the marches when a hero cop is executed, huh? I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight. I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight. Every push-ups for justice, each sit-ups for peace. Yet prepared for that battle waging up in the streets. Push the memories aside, keep the hate out of sight. Always on prowl for evil that lurks within the night. They said God made shepherds so that he could protect the flock. To overwatch and keep track of those that he's lost. When evil brings the fight, you know it's outnumbered. Sink your teeth in his back, you're the wolf hunter. I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight. I will defend my brothers, I will defend the weak. I will pursue and fight evil so others may sleep. I am the sheepdog, protecting the night. Wolf hunters unite, bring it on. It's time to fight.
Hey Doug, I'll tell you, man, this song is perfect when we're showing your segment and you're with all those OGs, man, all those legends from San Diego PD, gang suppression team, GST guys, and then the songs coming on, sheepdogs, we will protect the sheep. Dude, it could have played better. You know what I mean?
Man, it makes me feel old because that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, I think we all had. Well, actually, I can't say I had hair. Bobby still has hair. Eric still has hair a little bit more than I do. And Doug, you still have hair. But guys, before we get started, Eric, welcome to the show. Right now, we're just going to welcome everybody else that's watching us, and then we're going to give you a real, genuine Ash Wednesday welcome. Let's get started. Our producer, Benny Cruz, San Diego Sheriff, legend with the department for over 42 years. He says, David, you're taking too long. Where are you? Here I am enjoying a saladito con limón. And that's a little seed with a lot of salt and a lemon. Enjoy it, brother, with a shot of tequila. We got San Diego PD, Chris Kilby. The guy's a legend with the San Diego Police gang unit, with the robbery unit. Thank you, brother. You've been with us from the very beginning. And we got our sister drinking water with lemon because of that hot hot sun over there in Riverside. She's watching us from Riverside. Ceci, Eric has been with us from the very beginning, and she never misses a show. She's our sister watching our show. And from Riverside, we go all the way to Thailand. We got Jim DeJanis, the legend. He worked in Pelican Bay for over 18 years, Eric. This guy right here, he's a legend. You ask any Mexican mafia member that did time when the prison first opened for the first 17 years, they're definitely going to know Jim DeJanis. And by the way, Jim, outstanding episode on Boxer Enriquez. Loved it. Big VJ Juarez, another brother, has been with us from the very beginning, watching us from Long Beach. And today we got, once again, Cocaine Cowboys. He's usually watching us live every week. He's watching us from the Philippines, but today he's taking a vacation, Doug. He's in Thailand. I don't know why he's not with Jim, but he's
they should be.
Thailand. Huh? You're right. He should be. He should be with them. And then what he says here, he says they have cannabis stores on cannabis shops on every corner. Boy, has Thailand changed. And then he goes on stating that it's now legal in Thailand. So marijuana is booming everywhere in Thailand, the legality of marijuana. But these are some of the outstanding people that are watching our show from around the world, all the way from San Diego to Riverside to Long Beach, Thailand, and the Philippines. Guys, with that said, guys, let's start off with what are we drinking? And let's start off with you, Bobby. You're always surprising us with a great cigar. And what do you? Oh, you're finally back to drinking again. No more coffee.
I'm drinking.
All right.
Siete Leguas from Guadalajara. Obviously, all the tequila comes from there. When I was working in Mexico, I got introduced to the Siete Leguas Reposado. Love this one. So I'm drinking that in my adult-size shot glass.
Whoa.
I'm gonna mess around, man. There it is. And a cigar, I got a fine ash. The anniversary for Sam Lopez, the owner, his 50th birthday. It's kind of hard to see. I'm having some technical difficulty. I'm on my laptop today. So the camera wasn't working on my desktop, but that's what I'm smoking.
Hey, brother, that's a good cigar, man. That's an expensive cigar. Mm-hmm. Hey, salud. Right now we're going to do a salud. And then let's go down to Eric. Eric, what are you drinking today? You drinking anything today with us?
Nope. I got my big old water bottle.
All right. Well, that's good enough, brother. Yeah. That's good enough. Big Doug, you're always going to surprise us with a.
I'm going to surprise you with this. I'm going to surprise you with this one, Dave. I'm getting off the path here. I told you about the tasters I got from Austria, correct? All the whiskeys and stuff. Well, they also make a rum.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
I like rum.
Yep. It's called Alter Rum, and it's done in American oak. And I had a sip of it this time so I could explain what it tastes like. And it starts off like whiskey. It's got a little bit of bite to it. And then at the end, it's kind of sweet like a rum. So it's not your typical rum that you would get like in the Caribbean or, some of the more exotic places like that. So hand it to the Austrians and the Germans to still make a bite out of rum. There you go.
So are you drinking it on the rocks with a little bit of water or straight?
Just straight, brother.
It's straight, man. Here you are, man, drinking it straight. And here I am drinking a whiskey from Japan called Afu Yamato. And once again, I bought this bottle at Costco several months ago. And I go, you know what? I haven't had this. As a matter of fact, it's excellent. It's very, very good. And I have it over ice. With that said, guys, Bobby, I think you wanted to talk about the murder. We're going to do a toast for our brothers in Mexico.
As you all know, I worked in Mexico for 3 years. I ran the INL program as a regional program manager in Northeast Mexico. So what we did is we used local cops, investigators, prosecutors to help in our capacity building programs. And last Friday where did it happen at? In one of the suburbs of
Tlaquepaque,
Tlaquepaque, Guadalajara, which is supposed to be a fairly safe place. They had just finished teaching a class. Like always, every Friday, whenever a graduation, we would get together with our instructors, go have some tacos and a couple of beers. And while they were sitting at a restaurant, they were in a targeted attack. Some guys pulled up on scooters, motorcycles, and opened fire. And of the three instructors, two of them lost their life. and
Wow.
one survived. The one that survived, Pablo Cajigal, worked in Juarez. He's a gang expert on prison gangs and is very well known all over Mexico. He survived, but he's in critical condition. The other ones that died, I had met Carlos Amador Chavela. He worked a lot with the prosecutors with money laundering cases. He lost his life. And the other one was Cesar Guzman, who worked closely with DEA, the FBI, ICE, and all the other alphabet soup agencies. So, you know, in Mexico, they don't target Americans. To target an American, it would be a escalation that they would not be, for most part, are not willing to pay. But our locals give their lives constantly. And I want to make a toast to the Mexican patriots and who are friends, to Carlos Cajigal, Cesar Chavela, or Carlos Chavela, and Cesar Guzman. Here's to them. Que paz descansen.
Que paz descanse. Salud. Bobby, Pablo is a legend in Mexico.
Yes, he is.
That guy, I mean, he started his career, I believe, in Chihuahua, and he literally came up with a documentation process for all the Mexican gang members that came from the United States and basically started their own gangs in Mexico. The guy is a legend, you know, and wow, it's unbelievable. Maybe after he recovers, God willing, soon we could have him on the show. It would be an honor, and he speaks good English too. It would be an honor to have him on our show after he recovers.
Excellent.
Guys, with that said, Doug, it's all yours, my brother. Introduce our the legend that's with us from San Bernardino Police Department.
Okay, everybody. Tonight we've got a friend of mine, Eric Bennet. He retired from San Bernardino PD as a sergeant, and he's currently now with the district attorney's office as an investigator. And real quick, I'm just going to run by what his kind of his career entailed. Not any stories, but some of his assignments. Well, he started off in April of 2000 with the Los Angeles Police Department. And while with the LAPD, he spent his probationary time in, I believe, Hollywood Division. Is that right, Eric?
Correct.
Hollywood Division. And then he transferred to Southwest Division. Worked there for a couple of years. And in February of 2002, he found himself lateraling over to the San Bernardino PD, where he was initially assigned to patrol until, I believe, January of 2006. He did a short stint as the district resource officer in their northern district from January till June of 2006. And then in June of 2006, he was selected as a team member of, I think, was it newly developed, a crime impact team? Was it like a new group?
Yeah, it was a new group. We had, it was getting pretty violent, so they created a second team outside of the gang team.
Gotcha. So he was selected for that, and he continued to work in a proactive unit before returning to patrol as a field training officer. He was then transferred to the street level narcotics team within San Bernardino PD in May of 2008. And he worked on that team until January of 2009, so maybe like 7 or 8 months, when he was reassigned. And this is where I met Eric. When he was reassigned to the California Department of Justice's Crackdown Allied Task Force, or we called it INCA. And it was a task force comprised of deputies and officers from Riverside and San Bernardino County. So it was a pretty good sized task force, along with special agents within the Cal DOJ. And it was what we would describe as a majors group. A lot of long-term, god-awful moving surveillances and wiretaps and just some crazy stuff. And I mean, if it wasn't for Eric, I think half of us would have been lost when we were doing those rolling surveillances throughout LA, because he could tell us shortcuts to get places that we knew these guys were headed to. But it was a fun job. And Eric stayed there longer than I did. So he went on, and he was assigned there until October of 2012. After leaving Inca, he was promoted to detective and was assigned to the PD's narcotics squad, and then as a field training corporal to Yeah, it was a field training corporal. Went back to patrol for that. He worked burglary details, and then he was assigned kind of a TDY, sounds like, to the county sheriff's gang intelligence team to assist with another major investigation involving the gang members that task force was working within his jurisdictions. And then after work on that gang intel squad, he returned to narcotics at the PD. And that was during that time as a detective there is when the terror attack of December 2nd, 2015 occurred. And that's what he's going to be sharing with us tonight, some insight on that. In February 2016, he was promoted to sergeant. And while a sergeant, he was assigned to patrol, like we all get reassigned to patrol. He managed the field training program for the newer officers coming through, gang units, the narcotics teams, and then he managed the commercials traffic units. Just before retirement, he went back to patrol, and he actually retired out of patrol in July of 2023. And in that same month in his retirement, he decided he needed to go back to work and went and was hired by the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office. So he's got a well-rounded career, and he's got a lot of specialized expertise in different areas of investigations. But here he's going to share with us the incident of December 2nd, 2015, the terror attacks of San Bernardino. We've heard a lot of different stories, but Eric's going to kind of go through that with us. He's going to talk about the heroic acts of the responding officers, and he's going to talk about the victims and some of the heroism of some of the victims involved in this. And with that, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Just jump right in, or you want to do that first audio, or?
You want me to go ahead and do the first audio?
Okay, yeah, we could do maybe the first audio, and then I'll jump into it a little bit, and then hopefully some of the other stuff works.
Copy, shots fired east San Bernardino at Richardson. Take it on one. Taking fire, guys.
That very first, yeah. Does that audio work on that screen?
Yeah. Oh, on this screen?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay. All right. That would have played like the calls coming in for service that were coming into the dispatch center. So I was assigned to narcotics, like Doug said. We were doing what narcotics teams do. We were chasing pings out in LA. I think I made it out to the 60 and the 605, but as we were westbound on the 60, we had an analyst that kind of monitored our chat group. You know, if we needed to run plates or run people or run houses or whatever, she would help us out with that. And she started getting on the radio or on the chat and started talking about, sounded like there might've been an active shooter in the city. We kind of waited just a few minutes just to try to figure out what was going on. We couldn't hear the radio. You know, our radios didn't work out in LA. So she eventually came up and was like, yes, it's an active shooter event. And then the sergeant, who's Gary Schulke, very longtime mentor of mine that I had the privilege of working for a long time, he made a decision that we should probably just start heading back to the city, which we did. So it took us a little while to get back there. As you can imagine, LA traffic and all that stuff, it probably took us 30, 45 minutes to wind our way through and end up back in the city. In the meantime, you know, our patrol guys started responding to those calls for service. And within a couple of minutes, the first officer started arriving on scene. And we're pretty fortunate as a city to have the courts, the San Bernardino Superior Court in the city. So we tend to get a lot of agencies that are on there. A lot of surrounding agencies monitor our radio traffic, so they start hearing that stuff. And our SWAT team was actually training in the north end of the city. So it was kind of the perfect storm that day, where we had a number of people in the city that we wouldn't necessarily have. If you're familiar with kind of the city at that time, you know, the city had filed for bankruptcy, and a lot of officers had left. So our staffing was pretty much decimated. We went from somewhere around 350 guys and gals to just over 200. So a third of our department had either lateraled out, left, quit, whatever. So we had a lot of people that were gone. So patrol was extremely short, although we have the bureau and that stuff. So guys started responding. Those first units started making entry within, the first 5-6 minutes from the call. And those guys are probably the real heroes of the day, getting in there, getting aid. Probation was there. They started putting people in the backs of trucks. The fire department. It was just heroic by those guys getting in there. If you can imagine having 14 people dead and 22 injured, what that scene is like, gun smoke inside of a room, probably 100 rounds that had been fired inside there. So, they could hear or you could almost taste the smoke, the gunpowder, the water sprinklers were going off, alarms were going off as they were making entry. So those guys went in and, man, they took care of business and started evacuating. The Inland Regional Center is 3 buildings. So the southernmost building where this incident occurred is like a conference center, where it's a big open room, and they had tables set up. The county health department had I don't want to call it a Christmas party, but it was a Christmas type event. And the primary suspect was an employee of county health. I'm not big on talking about his name outside of, some law enforcement training and stuff like that, because I don't think he deserves anything from anybody. But he was a member of the health department, and he was in that training. North of that are 2 additional buildings that, if you know anything about the Inland Regional Center, if you know anything about the Inland Empire, they're big on helping people with disabilities, and, they offer an immense amount of services. So their campus can be packed with people. So they started doing all the evacuations, and as we're arriving on scene, as any good, I think, narcotics group or gang unit or street teams, right? We're just good at getting intelligence. So we, as a team, divided and conquered and started just getting out into the groups as they were being evacuated, and started talking to people on what they knew, what they thought, anything that struck them weird. And we end up, myself and a guy named Nick Kawahu, I'll talk a little bit. He was the guy that was shot in this whole incident. We're talking to an employee that came out of the Inland Regional Center, and he said that the suspect was in there, and he had left about 10 minutes before, went outside, and never returned. However, a person with a similar build, and that came into the building with another person and started shooting. So he thought that it was going to be him that was going to be involved in the incident. So we asked for his name, asked for any identifying information that he had, and we were able to get him identified. And through the sheriff's department, who over the years had garnered a pretty good relationship with that unit, was able to provide that information to them, and in turn were able to provide me with addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, driver's license numbers, all the information that we need, obviously, to get to work. And our analyst that was on the phone, her name's Donnie, she gets going on that information, and before we know it, right, we have addresses, we have a work number, personal phone number. So we're getting to work. We feel like we got a pretty good lead because he's nowhere to be found. At that time, it starts to get obviously chaotic with everybody showing up. A few hundred officers from all over the Inland Empire came. Every 3-letter agency from the federal departments were there, and every surrounding agency. I can't give a big enough kudos to those guys that were willing to come and jump in that fight that day. We ended up leaving once we got that information, we went behind a hotel, and we had 2 phone numbers. They were both with Verizon Wireless. So, with the emergency stuff we got going on, the exigencies there, I actually called Verizon, and I asked the guy, I was like, hey, are you watching the news? And he's like, yep. And I was like, all right, that's what I'm calling you about. Gave him the 2 phone numbers, and he gave us an address of one of the towers where one of the phones was hitting off of, which was one of the 2 addresses that we had. We had one out of Riverside, and then we had one out of Redlands. So we shot some guys to both until we could figure out where he was. Once we narrowed down that one of his phones was hitting off some towers in Redlands, shot the whole team over there. If there's one thing that any narcotics group is good at, it's surveillance. So made it over there just as he was leaving. He was in that black SUV that you saw, and it was actually his wife. So everybody describes a male. I would have described a male until the whole incident was over. So we're coming back, following him. He jumps back onto the freeway, jumps back on the 10 westbound, and is heading back towards the San Bernardino area. And Redlands is just the next city over for anybody that isn't familiar with the Inland Empire. Redlands, Loma Linda, Grand Terrace, Colton, San Bernardino, right? We're all kind of bunched up and all kind of border each other. The original incident happened in the 1300 block of South Waterman, which is fairly close to the 10 freeway, and Waterman. And then Redlands, literally, he was probably 6 or 7 miles from the incident location. He starts heading back westbound on the 10. Nick actually flags down a Redlands PD guy whose belt recorder is on, unbeknownst to anybody that day. We don't find out till afterwards. But so the belt recorder actually captures the interaction between Nick and the Redlands PD sergeant. And he does a really good job of not blowing Nick off and getting on that freeway and catching up to the guy. They actually exit on Tippecanoe. So in our city, Waterman is 1 west of Tippecanoe in the majors. So he was heading back to what we presume would be the incident location. He heads up northbound on Tippecanoe. The unit finally catches up to him and gets in behind him. So now there's a couple of Redlands units, marked black and whites, and then there's all of us in our unmarked cars. We're all trying to throw in vests and do all this stuff because kind of guessing that this thing's not going to go peacefully. Is kind of what we presume. Then he heads eastbound on San Bernardino Avenue. It's a railroad track. It's a primarily residential area. There's some warehouses just east of the incident location. But as we're heading eastbound on San Bernardino Avenue, we cross over some railroad tracks, and that's Richardson Avenue, and the back window explodes. And we don't hear it. We didn't really know what it was. It took us a second. And then one of our guys was like, I think they just fired out the back window and blew it open. And sure as heck, that's what happened. It was actually his wife. She fired the first round, travels just a few feet, and then she fires the second round out the back. And then at that point, as you heard in that audio, that was my sergeant that actually jumped on the radio. Because again, we're on chats. We're trying to stay off of the air. Our radios weren't encrypted, so people could hear us, media and all that kind of stuff could hear us. We travel another, I don't know, quarter mile maybe. And he pulls over, and he and her fire a total of about 80 rounds at us with the rifles. And then there ends up being 23 shooters. Just about my whole team was part of that. We fired about 400 rounds back at them, in the middle of a residential area. It was pretty interesting. I get out of my UC car and get out my driver's door, and like everybody, right, your helmet's in the back. I barely got my vest on, right? And I look at the guy from Redlands PD who used to work with us at San Bernardino PD, And I just looked at him and I was like, holy shit. Like I mean, you could feel the concussions coming off, and all you could hear is just boom, boom. I mean, it was unreal. Kind of surreal almost. But then we moved between the cars and we went, it's a residential area. So it's two lanes of travel going east and west, and some neighbors on the south side. And we just started jumping some fences, trying to get closer, because at this point we're a couple hundred yards probably from them. And we end up probably, I don't know, 25, 30 yards from them, jumping over fences. But that was pretty surreal. They looked like they were pretty focused on everybody in between the cars and in between the houses, where they really weren't focused on anybody that was on the far outside. However, he seems to get fixated on a deputy that kind of passes everybody. And he kind of turns his attention, or what I think anyways, turns his attention to that deputy. And that deputy unloaded everything that he had. He had unloaded a Mini 14, his handgun, shotgun, and he was empty. And that's where Nick sees trouble and goes, so we're all on the south side of the street. Nick Kawahu goes to the north side of the street because he kind of sees a little bit of trouble. He gets out of his van. He actually fires through his windshield and then gets out. And just as he gets out, he's going up, trying to get to that deputy. And he just feels a baseball bat to his leg. And so he goes down, realizes, he's probably shot. There happened to be some RSO deputy that was assigned to the Secret Service or something like that, he had a medic bag and he had all this stuff. And so we hear officer down, and initially I didn't know who it was. And I look over and there's the guy, and he's wrapping Nick's leg up, and Nick's underneath the car and he's firing. And we're like, all right, well, at least he's good. And he's Hawaiian, by the way. He's got these big old thighs. So it's the only reason that I tell him all the time, I think that's the only reason that the bullet didn't actually go through you, is because if you had legs like me, like my femur would have been toast. But his was not. So he had superpowers apparently when you're Hawaiian.
Hey, Eric, I was going to ask you, what weapons did you have? Did you have a 223, AR-15, an MP5? What weapons did you have?
So I had a handgun. I was spitting 9mm bullets at him. At the time, the department didn't issue everybody rifles. At the time, we had like a rifle group, right? They had some old rifles and they handed those guys out to patrol. And then some guys had bought their own rifles. We had a couple of rifles in the narcotics unit, but I didn't have one. So we had three. Nick, Gary Schulke had one. I think Brian Carmen had one. And then I think everybody else had handguns. So we were firing.
And these were the weapons they had? They had AR-15s and a couple of handguns? Correct.
He had a drop holster. We thought they had like vests on, but they were actually just like you remember the old mesh ones from the old days?
Oh yeah.
They just the cheap like mesh type vests. That's what they had with, they had ammo in there. Probably a couple thousand rounds total, but those were their guns. They each had the ARs. That's exactly how they were recovered. So with the optic, as you see there with the slings, all that stuff. So they were ready for a battle. I'll give it to him. He gets hit a bunch. I couldn't even tell you how many times, probably 20 or 30 times. He ends up going down and he's reaching for that handgun and pulling out that handgun and firing until it's all done for him. So he was pretty committed. And I think that's the big difference. Anytime I go around, it's been a little while since I've done these presentations, but I've done these presentations all over the country. And that's the one thing that I can't talk about enough. Obviously I wasn't a terrorist guy. I didn't have experience like you had, Doug, or those kinds of things, right? I was just a street cop. And those guys had a will to fight, and they were going to fight all the way to the death. She was in the back of the SUV that you saw there. She was in the middle seat, and she would pop her head up. She would fire some rounds, and then she would get back down. So it took a while to get those rounds through the car and through the seats and really get into her. So it did take a little while. She took probably the same. She probably took 20 plus, 30 plus rounds. That car, as you saw, was, if you looked at it from the backside, the thing was just obliterated. But, you know, they had a will to fight that was well past anything, you know, I had ever experienced. And, you know, I've been in a couple of other shootings and I've taken some other rounds, and there's nothing like that in my life. And I don't know that there's something that, you know, we can prepare all day long for gunfights and guys with guns and getting into shootings and doing all the running and gun and stuff, but that's a different mindset. So like, you gotta be ready for the fight. It was definitely different.
Wow.
Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
Sarge, I worked in Iraq for 2 years as a contractor, and I know exactly what you're talking about. People who are totally dedicated to their cause. That we had a couple of attacks where they attacked police stations, try to attack the military outpost, where they would do a dinner, read the Quran, have a celebration, and on the day of the attack, they would have somebody that literally would give themselves up, cause an explosion at a checkpoint so that all the responding units should go there. Then they're hopping a wall over, and they're wearing suicide vests to get to their target. And we had one attack where 5 guys are wearing suicide vests. One made it and killed the target. Everybody else got knocked down. And you sit there, you think about this. These people knew they were going to die. That is something us as Americans have never had to deal with. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Yeah. But that's what we have. That's the evil we face. And it's something that, like I said, it was an eye-opener for me. I already had retired, and I was working overseas and got to see that firsthand as a crime scene investigator, going to the scene and processing a crime scene of an attack like that.
Correct. And there was an IED left at the IRC that didn't go off. He had some IEDs at his residence, so that took some time once the residence got secured and all that kind of stuff. They thought initially that he had thrown some sort of explosive at us before, but that wasn't the case. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a different mindset. You know, I don't want to say that, you know, we do have to prepare for those things, right? I mean, they got to be in the back of your mind. And I think if you're prepared, in my mind anyways, I think if you're prepared for all the other stuff that we face out there, like, you'll be prepared for this.
Yes.
You know, but the whole fight or flight thing, like, that stuff's real. Like, you know, those rounds coming at you. And again, I don't know that outside of military people and guys that have been in combat, you know, we're not geared for 80 rounds being fired at local law enforcement in the middle of the street, in the middle of the day, you know. It's just not something that anybody's, you're just not, I don't know, we're just not built for it. Like, that's just not, it's just never a thought process. So it was very, very interesting. You know, and I so much focus gets put on, like, the stuff that was done on the back end with those guys, right? Getting those guys in, you know, the gunfight and all that kind of stuff, because you know, that stuff always looks, I guess, cool and all that stuff. But man, there's just countless heroes that day, from the survivors that survived inside that building and getting out, and, you know, wound care and the evacuations that people did, and, you know, the SWAT teams, you know, because the SWAT teams had to go in and breach doors and clear buildings, because that's what they do, right? I mean, they go in there and they got to make that entire scene secure. So, you know, there's just countless heroes, fire department, AMR, the hospitals, by God, the hospitals, you know what I mean? Like those guys are just true heroes. It was a day that, you know, you'll never forget. And for an agency like ours, a month before, we had an officer killed in a DUI crash. And, you know, we just never had time to kind of deal with that. And then this happens, and, you know, it was a pretty interesting time. And then just with the bankruptcy and, you know, the third of our department essentially leaving, it was a difficult time. And then to have to deal that.
Hey, Eric, you had your 9mm. How many rounds did you have Did you have extra? Did you have an ammo bag with you, and did you pick that up when you started engaging with this guy and attack? You guys were basically attacking him, trying to get closer to him to take him out. You remember counting your rounds? You remember ever thinking, I'm going to run out of ammo? Can you give us that mindset at that time? Can you take us back to that time?
Yeah. So as a surveillance team, again, we were chasing pings in the morning. So my vest is sitting behind my passenger seat, right? It's sitting behind there. I got 2 magazines in there. I got my little subcompact handgun that initially is with me, right? Because we're doing surveillance. And a couple of things we did when we went behind that hotel is we got a shotgun, we got some slugs. We made sure that guys had everything that they needed. So if they had 2 or 3 magazines, if they had a bag, whatever they had, like start bringing that stuff up front. But we never brought helmets up. We never brought any of that kind of stuff up. I never felt like I was going to run out of ammo. I knew I had some guys with rifles, and just as we got up there and the engagement happened, there were enough rifles that I took a step back and then started jumping on the radio. There was a bunch of stuff that was going on the radio, just with people seeing people run in. We got a helicopter, our helicopter with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. It's one of the few helicopters they'll fire out of there. So they'll engage bad guys out of the helicopter. So, they were doing their thing up there. So I just jumped on the radio and started coordinating some stuff. So I went through most of my first mag and then kind of took a step back. My sergeant had a rifle, so he was going to be engaged. And then since I didn't have a rifle, I just took that, being the
took his role,
I guess, on the team. I took kind of that role, so he could stay engaged with that rifle, and then he could coordinate stuff there. I can coordinate stuff there. We had worked together since 2006. Damn near 10 years, right? I mean, I knew what he was doing, and he could almost tell what I was going to be doing. So we just worked so well together that that day just worked.
And Eric, who was the incident commander at the shooting scene? Was it Redlands PD? Because it was a sergeant that basically was taking him down. Was taking him down in his vehicle. Shooting came. Was it them that took over, or did you guys, the original agency from San Bernardino Police Department, were you guys the incident commanders at the shooting scene?
So we divided, and that was done obviously above my pay grade, but we had to deal with the original incident location at the Inland Regional Center, where we had the deaths there, and you had the shooting scene, and you had the house. So my agency, San Bernardino PD, took the scene at the Inland Regional Center, and then the FBI, they have their evidence group, and I don't care what people think of the FBI. Their evidence group is that's a top-notch group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're good at that job. So us, along with the FBI's evidence group, dealt with the Inland Regional Center, and then the Sheriff's Department at the time, I think they were running 4 homicide teams. So they had the manpower to deal with the 23 shooters and to deal with that crime scene. And we couldn't even do, you couldn't even do walkthroughs, and back then we did walkthroughs. You're going to do a shooting, you kind of, all right, I was here, whatever. You couldn't do it because there were freaking casings everywhere, essentially 500, right? Out in the middle of the street. So that's how that was divided. And then I believe the FBI's team took the IED stuff at the residence, and that was in Redlands.
Eric, we have a question from one of our listeners who actually lives in Riverside, Ceci. Question is a great question, by the way, Ceci. I was thinking the same thing. Why did they target that place? Was there any special reason why they targeted that place?
So he was an employee of the county health department, and they were doing a Christmas deal, like a Christmas party. They were doing awards. They were doing some training. So we believe, anyways, that was, and he doesn't celebrate any of the holidays, so he's not into any of that stuff. And they believe and kind of talking to the survivors and stuff, they watched him over the last few years kind of radicalize. So they watched him bring her over. He would stop routinely at mosques for his prayer times and those kinds of things. He'd leave his, he was doing some training. So he would leave the person that he was training in the car, and he would go in and do his prayers and then come out. So they watched this whole radicalized thing happen. He started treating the female employees differently, really just became radicalized. So we think that was just that target of opportunity, because it's a holiday celebration, which he doesn't do. And it's essentially going to be an unarmed, target-rich environment.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, I got a quick couple questions for you. I read that some of the officers, I don't know if they were ones that initially responded, the first units that got there, obviously they believed the suspects were still there, the way they handled the scene, and rightfully so. You have to assume that the bad guys are still there. Were there officers that had just been released or just coming from active shooter training that responded to that? Do you know?
It was our SWAT team. Our SWAT team was up doing, I don't remember exactly what they were doing, but I think they were doing some sort of active shooter type training up there. They had just gotten started for the day, so they really didn't even.
Oh, okay.
They hadn't even gotten going, but we were fortunate. They were about 10 minutes out, and the county sheriff's department was actually training that day too. So it was kind of a perfect storm for us to be able to have an additional 20 or 30 guys that were ready and raring to go. Not only that, all kitted up too. I mean, they had all their equipment where, most of us, well, at least our narcotics group didn't. So,
yeah. Eric, after the incident was over, did it come out that both suspects, were they on the FBI's watch list?
No, not that I know of. Not that I've ever heard. Not that I've ever heard.
No, I think they learned a lot of that stuff afterwards, after they're able to get into their phones, because that was the case where Apple wasn't providing them with access to the iPhone, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we had it's pretty interesting. We had a witness actually give they had a Utah plate, so they gave that plate over by Succumby Lake, which is don't get me wrong, it's not a lake. It's not a lake where you go and
fish.
Yeah, don't go fishing. Anyways, it was over there, right? So we got a plate, and that's where they had done a bunch of diving for their equipment, because I thought maybe it was there. But yeah, that was the iPhone issue there. We have some I have a mapping thing of their movements afterwards, which is pretty interesting. They never leave, so they go like eastbound on the 10, they go northbound on the 210, like 330 area. They stay in that general area. They never leave, which was pretty interesting to learn as well, as these guys I think they were just plotting their next move, and they keep in mind, she left a 6-month-old baby at the house with his mother. So, that's, when we start talking about like cause, like it is, they were down for the cause. Very, very interesting. So there's a lot in the act. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, what did we find out about them? Was it her that basically radicalized him? I mean, what was her background? Was it ever publicized, her background?
He went to Pakistan,
visa, right? She was probably here on a visa.
Correct. He went to Pakistan. They met online, and then he went to Pakistan and brought her back. And then, we believe that she radicalized him. However, he grew up down in Riverside. He grew up in the Inland Empire, went to Cal State San Bernardino, right? So he was a local kid. And he met a guy named Enrique Marquez, who he's the one that actually bought some of those guns. And he's sentenced now, I think 2019, 2020, something like that. He got sentenced to 20 years in prison. But they were planning attack at RCC, the 91 freeway, right? They had some other stuff planned, and they just didn't follow through on those attacks. And those go back to like 2011 is where they were planning some of those attacks. But again, a lot of that stuff, right, we've learned long after that stuff. And, UPS guys were delivering thousands of rounds of ammunition to his house. His neighbors would see weird stuff because it was like a garage in the back of the house, right? It was like an alley behind their house. So, you know, neighbors would see just weird stuff going on back there, but everybody's afraid to call, right? Everybody's afraid to, the whole see something, say something was not in play here.
Yeah.
And I think probably due to his nationality, due to who he was, right? People didn't want to be wrong. And I think even when you talk to some of the county health people, like they should have said something too, because I think maybe some of this stuff could have been prevented had people had the courage to step up and say something. I think that's the only way these things ever get stopped, outside of good work by, you know, JTTF groups or whatever that are out there working terrorist organizations. But these things fall through the cracks. These lone wolf guys are, as we learned that day, they were committed. They were down for the cause.
Yeah, I had read that I think it was a DOJ report, a federal DOJ report, that they, long after this incident, because they were still going through all their stuff off their phones and computers, that she had like direct access to some ISIS guys, and that they think that she was really involved in radicalizing her husband. Not that he didn't already have those tendencies, but I think she kind of pushed it along. And then afterwards, ISIS actually sent out whether it's true or not, whether they're just jumping on the bandwagon to get their name out there again. You never know these things, but, they were praising her for, and him for what they had done.
Correct. They made a post praising whoever.
Yeah.
And then I think, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that we never get told after these incidents. So, but my understanding is that there was some praise coming from those terrorist organizations, and of course they're going to jump on the bandwagon when we've got, you got one of the largest mass casualty events outside of September 11th at the time, who's, and then a bona fide terror attack too. So, when you start putting all those little names on events like this, right, it's going to cause some stir.
Yeah. So let's talk about what happened afterwards. So I think all of us are aware that usually when there's an officer-involved shooting, the officers are taken out of the field. They're put on administrative duties while the investigation goes on. If you have that many officers in your department, I mean, that's like an eighth of your department that can no longer go to work until it's been reviewed. How long did it take for the review of that case before guys could start returning back to full duty?
So there was my agency, there was Redlands PD, San Bernardino County Sheriff's, one guy from the DA's office, from San Bernardino County DA's office. I think that was it. So it wasn't all one agency. I think we had the bulk of it. I think we probably had half the shooters.
Okay.
Our agency is a little bit different though. Our San Bernardino Police Department, I guess I'm retired now and I gotta remember that sometimes, but we handle things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's wasn't uncommon for officer involved shootings to happen, and it's a pretty violent city. So we all go back to the sheriff's department. A whole crap ton of attorneys come in, and then we do interviews till 2-3 o'clock in the morning that morning. So we did, most of us did our interviews that night. We all decided as a team, our narcotics group, because Nick was in the hospital. So we had to kind of deal with that. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't remember. So we decided as a group, let's just go home, grab a couple hours of sleep. And then we'll get over to the hospital with Nick. We knew it wasn't life-threatening. We knew that he was okay. So we just thought, all right, let's go home, grab a couple hours sleep. We'll get up, we'll go deal with him, and then we'll figure out what is next. We got up next morning and started getting on the phone. it's pretty interesting. My daughter was actually babysitting his kids at not at that specific time, but during this time. So, you know, we've got a very close family connection with him, and it's now his ex-wife, but we've got a very close connection with them. And she was getting him out of the hospital. So we're like, all right, well, to the office we go. So that happened, and we were in the office the next morning. We had some work to be done. They didn't let us go out. Everybody went on 12 on, 12 offs until they could get a lot of the stuff figured out. They just didn't let us do that kind of stuff. So we went in, dealt with the aftermath, and then we had a weekend off, I guess. So then we were right back to work.
So what are the normal hours for patrolmen? Are they on the 12-hour shifts in patrol?
At that time, we were on 410s. So
Okay.
On that time, we had four 10-hour shifts, and then they just did 2 12-hour shifts. So everybody went 12 on, 12 off for, I don't know, it might have been about a week. I don't really remember because we just weren't involved in any of that stuff.
Right.
They kind of kept us away from all of that. But we were back to work. You know, I can't, I don't know, me personally, any of mine, you know, I was back to work fairly quickly.
Yeah.
A day or two.
Eric, what did we learn as a nation, law enforcement, after this shooting? What changes occurred within law enforcement agencies, not only in California, nationwide, behind this shooting?
That's a really good question. We started doing these presentations, and I don't want to say that we were a leader in all this. You know, we got kind of thrust into these presentations following this incident, but we had a lot of lessons learned, right? We had a lot of how we park, how we stage medical aid, how we respond to active shooter events, how we find areas to do interviews, how we bust people in, bust people out. Like, how do we get people, you know, you've got 200 people at this place of business because, again, you have the conference center where the incident occurred, but you have the other 2 buildings where there's a ton of people. And how do we get them to a safe area, evacuated, not standing on the street, right? So we started really talking about that incident command and incident control. And we started seeing some of the responses to different parts of the country, right? When these incidents would happen, and you'd be like, man, they used buses for this. They did something, you know. I'm like, man, did we speak to that group? Did we have like a say? You know, did they listen? Did they whatever? Because we were doing these presentations literally all over the country, and some of them still get done today. I just did one a few weeks ago to the sheriff's department, actually. So, you know, I think how we responded that day, the bravery of the guys that went in, you know, and at the time, you know, people can look at 2015 and, you know, we were still doing the diamond formations and 4 people going in, active shooter stuff, right? And that stuff's evolved greatly, you know, and I think nowadays, you know, our response would have been different, you know, but, you know, at the time the response was, man, it was heroic, right? They went in and our guys unfortunately stepping over victims, right? And getting their pants pulled, you know, by people asking for help, and those guys just pushing forward and going back and finding those people dead or whatever. And, you know, the images that are ingrained in those guys' minds for the rest of their lives because they couldn't save anybody. You know, it's just, I don't know, it's a great question. And I hope with the presentations we've done over the last almost 10 years that we made a little bit of a difference. We had a school shooting not too long after at North Park Elementary School where a guy went in and killed his wife and ended up killing a kid. And the response that day, based off lessons we learned from the December 2nd incident, were nothing short of heroic. You know, the way that the guys parked and the way, you know, ingress and egress, like, you know, we talk about it all the time. And I'm sure you guys did all the way through your careers because you would get guys that would park all wonky and you can't get ambulances in or fire or whatever. You know, you can't get a unit out to take a body. You know, there's just so much that we need to talk about. And that North Park Elementary School shooting for us was kind of that we did everything right. Right. I mean, we got the kids out of the school, we put them on buses, we got them to another location, a safe location. Right. We had, like this one at the Hernandez Center, right? Reunification centers, right? That started becoming a big buzzword for people. And, so we see some of that stuff today. And I don't know if that was because of the San Bernardino Police Department, but I'd like to think we played a little part in that stuff, throughout the country. Because again, we did do these presentations all over the place. So I think that was a big lesson. And then the other lesson, I think, that see something, say something thing. Yes. That stuff's real, man. People gotta have the kind of the ganas to say that doesn't look right, and report it. Because I think so many red flags in this case, so many red flags that just never, people just didn't have the courage to step up and say something to, and, to my agency, I love that agency, right? I mean, those guys are heroes through and through. And they were heroes that day. So,
wow. Yeah, I know you.
Go ahead, Doug.
I know your family. You and your family are really close. I mean, I see your posts and how involved you are with your children and stuff. How did your family handle your being involved in such a situation? I mean, sometimes we get so focused on ourselves and our partners. And I was one at one time also where I tried to shield my family from my job, but you're not going to shield them from that. I mean, it was such a huge incident. How did they handle that?
So my dad is retired, Los Angeles Police Department. So I think that has always helped throughout my career. I think for me, my wife, I think I got into a shooting pretty early in my career. Within the first couple of years. So I don't want to say you get used to those phone calls at all, but, it was definitely something kind of in the back of her mind. We had our youngest at the time was 5. He was in kindergarten. This thing's all over the news. The school that he went to, in his class had other San Bernardino police officers' families and that kind of stuff. So that day particular, called my wife, called my dad. And that way he could deal with some of the family. She could deal with some of the friends that were calling her and trying to get updates and that kind of stuff. She doesn't bug me when I'm out working and doing this stuff. That's just not what she does. So I know, like for me personally, like when I go to work and, I'm in the middle of all of that kind of stuff, I don't have to worry about what's going on here. That's for me, it's just not something that I've ever had to worry about. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And then, my dad was able to handle kind of, the rest of my family, my parents, my aunts and uncles and those kinds of things, because everybody knew kind of where I worked. And then, same thing, I helped manage a fairly large soccer organization too. So there's a lot of people there that, are curious. So I think, for me, that's the way that it got handled. And a lot of that stuff, like getting up the next morning, going to work, doing that kind of stuff. Like, again, I didn't have to worry about the other stuff. My wife had it, but she had to go deal with my kindergartner's school teacher and make sure, in case anything was, because, you can't, I don't care how young you are, what's going on. Like you see a little bit on the TV, you see a little bit of worry in your parents or whatever, right? I mean, they're pretty intuitive characters. He doesn't remember it, however, I will say that. Wow. I had to do a presentation again, like I just mentioned, for the sheriff's department a few weeks ago. And it was the first time that he started to ask me questions about it. My older kid, I got 3 adult kids, and they've always been a little more, like to ask questions about kind of the job, especially like when we were working majors and stuff like that, right? That was kind of a kick in the pants to them. But they were old enough to remember some of the bad stuff that's happened during my career as well. So, they definitely ask a little more questions. But my kids are pretty, I don't know, I guess I'm blessed, Doug.
Yeah.
I guess in the long run, because when they ask, I'll talk about it. But like you, I shield them from it. I don't my wife always says too, she says, I live in this little bubble. Like, I don't need to know what's out there. That's your problem, not my problem. Like, you deal with that. You'll keep us safe, whatever, you know? And I think that's kind of been the way that we've been able to handle some of this stuff, you know, burying my buddies or Nick getting shot or, you know, getting involved in, you know, again, the other shootings. And because my last one was just in 2020. So, you know, she's had to deal with some crap for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric, after an incident like this, especially during a shooting, the camaraderie that forms with the brothers and sisters that are partaking in that type of event, how are they doing today? Do you know a lot of them have probably retired? I don't know if anybody retired because of the incident. Is any of them that you are aware of suffering from PTSD? And if they are, does your department or any departments there in the Inland Empire have any programs geared toward helping police officers suffering from PTSD? Because PTSD is real.
It is real. And I will say that I think our profession fails in that respect. And I don't think, it was part of the presentation that I would do throughout the country. I always tried to hit on this stuff because, you know, our law enforcement suicides, like that stuff's real. And my agency hasn't necessarily been hit by the bug. You know, it was very early in my career. We got hit with it once, but we never really got hit with that suicide issue. So I think it gets lost in that. And I think, as you guys know, like, even if you got it, you can't talk about it. You know what I mean? Like right. you can't, like, we're all still, like, I'm a gun carrying guy now, you know, as an investigator with the DA's office. So, you know, nobody can talk about it, but that's just real. I mean, you know, you could talk about the nightmares, you could talk about all the other stuff that comes along with all this crap that you see, you know. And I just think, again, I think as a profession we fail. And I think it, to me anyways, in my opinion, and definitely not the opinion of where I work or any of that kind of stuff, but is management and administrators need to do a better job of recognizing that stuff. Because I think those guys, you know, they get in those freaking positions, man, and they lose their spine, they lose all sorts of stuff, and you just don't have good guys leading police departments with the courage to address some of those issues that need to be addressed. And then in the Inland Empire, we have the counseling team, and they're amazing, right? So if you have issues, you can reach out to them, and I'll just about all the local agencies that I know of go to them. But you know what? After a shooting, you go and talk to them for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
My last one, I did it over a Zoom call, right? I mean, come on. let's be real, right? I mean, yeah. I'm sitting there drinking my coffee and I'm just trying to get the heck out the door to go back to work. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know, dude. We fail at that. And I think, I don't know, and I don't even know where it begins. I think it begins with us, honestly, because I don't think administrators and leaders, and I hate to even call some of those guys leaders because they're not, they're just managers, but they just don't have the courage to stand up and say, guys need help, you know? And so guys drink and guys do all that kind of stuff. You know, they have all the vices that that they turn to, and, you know, and then we don't even see that either. Right. So I mean, alcoholism and all the other stuff that comes in this profession or with this profession. And it's sad. It's sad. So I hate to see that stuff.
Hey, Eric, you know what? Thank you very much for being on the show. We usually an hour, but you know what? We went over that hour. I'll tell you, the response that we're getting, speechless. This is real. I mean, the responses that we're getting are outstanding. Thank you. Thank you sincerely from the bottom of our heart for being on. With that said, Doug, any last words for Eric?
No, Eric, it was good seeing you again. And when I get back out there, I'll definitely get a hold of you, and I'll drive up and meet you for lunch or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, of course, brother.
You put up that picture of the victims, the ones that died that day.
Yes.
And Yvette Velasco, who's kind of on the top row towards the right, her dad is a retired CHP officer. And they had a thing at like the airport or whatever to come meet us. So it was like the families of the victims and then law enforcement and all that stuff. He came over to us and he couldn't thank us enough for what we did. And I just, when he came over to us and he starts telling his story about that, I mean, right, we're just breaking down crying. So we can't forget, like, as a nation, like the sacrifices that these families make.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bobby, any last words for Eric?
Yeah, Eric, it was an honor having you on. If we ever do an episode in the future about PTSD, I would strongly recommend bringing Eric back. I'm listening. Yes. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm sitting here with. I feel like my tears are ready to come out because I self-identify with what you did with your kids. My main officer-involved shooting I was involved in. My son was 2. My wife was pregnant with my daughter. She saw the shooting on the news, and we didn't have pager. We had pagers, but no cell phone.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to a payphone, and when I called, she knew we were involved because she had called the police station, and the news was saying 2 dead. They didn't say they're good guys or bad guys. And then my grandmother saw the news on Spanish TV, so I had to call her. And I'm sitting here listening to what you're saying. My God, it was just, would love to have you back on another episode where we could talk of how we can help each other as a community, because I totally agree. Our so-called management or leaders, whatever you want to call them, a lot of them fail us, especially in a lot of the bigger departments. I come from a big department, and they just toss us to the curve, I feel like. They really do. So
I think in those bigger departments, like, I mean, I think sometimes you get lost in that shuffle.
Yeah, really. You're out of sight, out of mind once you leave, and as if we leave those scars behind. We used to have a saying on the PD is that they get the stars, we get the scars, is what we would say.
Yeah, I think it is frustrating, and even in smaller departments like mine, right, where there was, at this time, I don't know, there was 200 plus guys, right, and up to maybe they're about 300 now, but you're right back to work. Like, it's not even, it was just, the city was so violent that was just the expectation, guys, nowadays, and I'm on the officer involved shooting response team from the DA's office. So we see departments doing, interviews a week later, giving these guys some adequate time off. All right, well, at least there's a start there, right? But, and I don't know about yours, but every one of mine, right, you're interviewing that night and you're back to work as quick as you can get back to work.
We went right back to work, but it's
correct.
changed. In our deal, hey, quit being a sissy, go back to work.
You went to the range, qualified, and
right.
Yeah,
made sure the gun shot, and you're right back to work. So yeah, it's crazy. I'm super passionate about it. I honestly, I got a bachelor's and a master's, and I wish I would have done my master's in some sort of counseling or something like that, so I could have made an impact in that regard. So I'm all for it. I'm a straight shooter too. I'll tell it like I see it.
Yep.
Yeah, you will.
Hey, brother, we look forward to having you come back, and we're definitely going to do an episode in the next couple of months on PTSD, and we're definitely having you back. Brother, thank you very much for your service, and you know what? Be safe out there, and God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Good seeing you, buddy.
Thanks, Doug. Good seeing you.
Good.
Wow, guys, what a story, huh?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Man, amazing. The man is a true hero, even though he mentioned all the other heroes, but him himself, I mean, everybody that was there at that day. And guys, you know what? Right now, talking about PTSD, this is a great segue into what we are going to be starting, hopefully next month, The Forgotten. Every month, like I said before, every month we are going to have one special video at the end of the month on Ash Wednesday, and we're going to actually do a toast for all our brothers and sisters, whether it's military, whether it's law enforcement, first responders, corrections, that have committed suicide. We hear about all of our officers that have died in the line of duty, but we forget those that have taken their lives. And it's funny, last Tuesday, I talked about this, and the following morning, Wednesday, I asked everybody watching the show to please send me a picture. If you want to send me the name of the person, what happened, I'm okay with it. But we're just going to be posting the pictures with the beautiful song, believe it or not, by Jelly Roll. It's a beautiful song, and we're going to be posting it on both shows, Ash Wednesday, once a month, and we're going to be honoring our brothers and sisters that took their lives, and that I truly believe that are with the Lord. There are angels today, and what I want you to do, if you can, please send the picture, the name, whatever you want to send me to my email, which is sheepdog period assist ACIST at gmail.com. And every month we're going to be honoring our brothers and sisters that have taken their life. And with that said, last Tuesday I talked about it. Right away I started getting pictures. It just happened the following morning when I get up on Wednesday morning. I live in Tampa. This happened at Soledad State Prison. I didn't get it till about 11 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I believe, when the officer got to work. Sends me this picture of this young lady who took her life last Tuesday as we're talking about the forgotten, our heroes. She was a correctional officer. As you could see, a very beautiful young lady. She took her life, and the warden actually put out a memo basically talking not about the incident, but that she passed away, she took her life, and offering counseling to all the correctional officer staff. So please, if you can, if you know somebody that has taken their life, like I said, I already have probably about 10 pictures so far, but the whole song, we're going to be honoring every month our brothers and sisters that have taken their life. What do you guys think about this, Doug and Bobby?
Good. I already have a couple of pictures I'm thinking that I will be sending to you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, like you've been saying, Eric just said, both you guys are saying, and the guys, Jalo and Sean and Benny have always talked about it, is that there's just no awareness, and it's something that needs to be done. And if it can help one person, then it's worth doing. And then it shows our fellow officers and correctional, first responders, hospital personnel, all these folks that we deal with all the time, to see the tragedies of our society all the time, that, we're thinking about these folks, and then maybe they'll reach out before, something like this happens.
And Doug, I don't know if you were aware of this, Bobby, but every hour, one American hero is committing suicide in America. Every hour, 24 commit suicides within a 24-hour period. And one of the things that Eric was saying makes a lot of sense. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be teaching this class for those of you that want to go to the 2025 California Gang Investigator Association. It's going to be August 18th through the 22nd in Anaheim. I'm going to be teaching a 2-hour class on the book that Benny, myself, and Pete Bollinger wrote called When the Music Stops, the Pain Begins. And it's on PTSD. Police officers committing suicide. It's geared toward police officers committing suicide and suffering from PTSD. It's going to be at this conference. I'll be teaching it on Wednesday, a 2-hour class. But with that said, guys, when we retired, when we came on the department, whether we did 32, 25, or 35 years on, they prepared us for the academy. And every 2 years throughout our 30 plus years on the department, we would go to advanced officer training, where they would basically give you new tools, new laws. We had to go through different trainings. But throughout our 32 years in law enforcement, they never prepared us or trained us to be civilians. At least San Diego PD never did. When I retired from the police department, I was lucky enough where they announced my name. I didn't have a going away party because I chose not to. I went in alone. I came out alone. But they basically, that was my going away. They announced my name. We took a big picture at police headquarters. About 150, 200 officers showed up, and that was it. I shook everybody's hand, thanked everybody, but they never prepared me to be a civilian. And I'll tell you, to me, that was the hardest part of my life, being a civilian, because it was then, because throughout my 32 years, I compartmentalized everything. All the shootings, all the killings, all the incidents, all the kidnappings, everything that we responded to, basically, you have to compartmentalize it. You can't go around crying in front of everybody when they shoot another officer, because you'll be seen as being weak. You can't basically show emotion. You have to basically compartmentalize it. But it's, guys, it's after we retire. When the music stops, that's when all of a sudden the dreams start occurring. The triggers start occurring. And they never prepared us for this. And that's one of the things that we are going to be addressing, the chiefs of police. We're going to start off with California. I already have a couple of chiefs. Andy Mills is one of the chief of police from Palm Springs. He's going to champion it with me, that we want to have the chiefs of police implement an exit training for police officers. They need to prepare us. They need to tell us PTSD is real. It's when you stop, the music stops, that everything you compartmentalize starts coming out. And that's when the dreams, that's when the triggers, and like I said, and it goes on. That's where the divorces come, because they never prepare us. So yeah.
My day of my retirement, no announcements. I didn't have a party either, because I chose not to have one. But my whole day consisted of me gathering up all the equipment that I had been issued, going down to personnel, signing the paperwork, getting my retirement badge, and walking out the door. That was it. Didn't see any command staff. A couple people saw me in the hallway in the elevators, and they congratulated me. But other than that, there was no, and I wasn't looking for fanfare. It was more like, thanks for doing a good job. Something, nothing.
That's right. Yeah. But you know what?
It's kind of sad. That's why I try to go to retirement parties now, because it's like, it's important.
Yeah.
Those things are important to say, the official goodbyes to your colleagues and your friends.
And you know what? And that's why I love right now that Eric brought it up, or we talked about it, because you're absolutely right, Bobby. We need to make more of an emphasis on our channels, on both programs, on PTSD, because you know what? Look at this young lady. She wasn't looking at our channel, but the day that we announced these, now she's going to be part of our Forgotten Heroes.
Right.
You know, only God knows what she was going through at that moment, that night when we were talking, and she took her life, so yeah, God willing, we're going to make a difference, and we're going to start talking about it. We're going to bring it to light more and more on our channels, God willing. Yeah.
Right.
Well, guys, time is up. Bobby, any last words for everybody that's watching our show? Once again, Eric, thank you very much, brother, it was a wonderful show.
Thanks for checking in as usual, and everybody have a great week and a blessed weekend as we fast approaches.
Doug?
That's it. I'm just thanks for watching. Share the message. And I think Chris was on there again about the buddy checks. He's the master of buddy checks. He makes sure to call people. All it takes is one call. Just do one call.
And you know what? I'm gonna jump on that also, Doug. You know what, Chris? You're that guy. Last week we honored Mike Gutierrez. It was because of you. You're the one that gave us the idea, gave it to Doug, gave it to the team. And it's men like you, brother, that call me once a week when you're on your walk. And you know what? I want to learn from you. I want to learn how to call cops. I want to learn how to call relatives that I haven't talked to in a long time, because that one phone call may make a difference. We will see you next Tuesday on the Gray Line. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good night.
Outside of this one church town, there's a gold dirt road to a whole lot of nothing. Got a deed to the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country. We
We pray for rain and thank him when it's falling, 'cause it brings a grain and a little bit of money. We put it back in a plate, I guess that's why they call it God's country. I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. We turn the dirt and work until the week's done. We take a break and break bread on Sunday, then do it all again, 'cause we're proud to be from God's country. I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. Headstone reads or what kind of pine wood box I end up in. When it's my time, lay me 6 feet deep in God's country.